these are the core components and pieces of what I would like to see with an aligned team. So when we can get clarity around these areas, there's tremendous alignment and momentum that can happen. And so as we walk through these, you could be thinking, how are we doing in these areas? You know, as our congregation or our vestry or our leadership team, you know, are we clear on this, or is it kind of unclear, or we just completely don't have this in place at all, right? These are the things in the building blocks that we would like to see that we work through in our planning process, and we continue to help walk this out for months, you know, with the different parishes that we work with. But at the bottom, these are foundational things that don't move, they don't change as much or ever. And as you move up this pyramid, they do change, and they should change depending on the dynamics and what's happening. And on the very bottom layer, there are core beliefs. There are some groups that I've worked with, it's kind of squishy. It's like, I don't know, what is it that you actually believe here, right? You know, you start asking a few questions, and it's like all over the place. And there are some core essentials that I think are really important to make sure that we're clear on those. You know, these are things that are the essence of why and who we are and what we believe. And I believe within the context of, you know, from the Episcopal Church, from the baptismal covenant, and there's elements that these are things that are grounded, foundational things in our core beliefs. There's some other things that may not fit in that bucket, right? That may be things that we would debate, you know, myself, and if we were to survey just all of you all that are connected here, we'd be all over the place on some of those things that we would debate or maybe discuss, that they're you know, there's less clarity. We have opinions. We may interpret a particular scripture one way versus another, and twist and bend and think and shape and talk about this over coffee, but it's not the essence and the core of who we are. So getting that essence really clear and allowing for an environment that can appreciate the diversity of other thoughts and ideas is really important. Mission answers the question, why? Why? And I'm going to extend that into who as well. From a practical standpoint, why do we exist? That's what mission answers. Depending on what books you've read over the years or even last week, there's a lot of definitions around mission, vision, and strategies. And so this is how we would lay that out. A mission statement, ideally is 12 words or less. It's clear, answers the question why. What we think gets more traction when we're connecting with congregations is that who is it that you're actually trying to reach? Who's not here right now that you actually want to come through the doors? And this is not exclusionary, but it's a matter of focus. If you could think about maybe the group that has been neglected, the group that for whatever reason we've just done a poor job in reaching. Sometimes that enters into the discussion, but we'll spend a little bit of time on that. But why do we exist, and who is it that we're actually trying to connect with? Making disciples, if I'm new and I don't know anything, do we actually have a path or a clear path on how we help bring maturity and growth for someone once they enter into the life of our congregation? Or are we doing a lot of activities and it's not clear what that path? And so we'll speak a bit more to that. But if that's not clear, that's one of the foundational things that we would maybe need to do some work on. Vision, as I mentioned, I believe we all want to be part of something greater than ourselves. I'll say this, when there's a lack of vision, I think it's an attribute of some of the congregations that are struggling most in the pandemic. The other thing I see in congregations is that when there's not a vision, all these other little things start rearing their heads. Well, I don't like the color of the walls in our third education room. You know, we really need to paint those walls, right? And the little comments and the small divisive things that can start popping up, and what color the tabletop covers are. You all know what I'm talking about, I think. If not, you've heard stories, right, of things that happen. But when there's a lack of vision, we tend to focus on things that are not the main thing. And we need a strong vision of where are we headed, and it answers that question, where are we headed in the next 3 to 5 years? And we know that needs to be adaptable and change, but it gives us a good sense of direction of what might our parish look like 5 years from now. Organizational goals tie largely back to those vital signs. I think identifying what 3 to 5 of those may look like for what we need to focus on in the next 12 months is really key. How do we know that we are moving towards health? How do we know that we have the right things in place to help us in that path? Strategies answers the question how, and this is the bucket that got dumped during COVID. You all apparently were doing some things on Sunday mornings in person for hundreds of years, right? February, March comes along, and that strategy, one of the ways that we help people connect in this great journey, we can't do that anymore. And so that bucket got dumped, and we had to think of new ways of how do we move the mission forward when we can't meet in person. And that's a great example of that. Strategies should shift, should adjust in time. And our missional priorities and personal priorities then should align. Every committee, so when we talk about alignment, every committee, our vestry to clergy to ultimately our entire congregation should look at where are our areas of focus and how do we bring this committee or ministry into an alignment of what we're trying to do collectively as an entire parish. And then our personal priorities can be the same way. You know, if someone were to walk in and say, what do you need from me? I've got an oar in my hand and I want to row and help add fuel and direction into where we're headed. How can I help? And I were to walk into the office of the rector and say, I've got 2 to 4 hours. What do you need from me? That's just a mindset of alignment and saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help us move this mission forward. And it's a beautiful thing when we can get that type of an alignment. So we're going to assess where are we at today and start building a foundation of what does it look like from building a strategic plan and some of the parts and pieces of that. For an existing congregation, it's relaunch comes with clarifying the vision and getting a sense of we're moving from where we've been and there's a new direction that we need to move to. It's clarifying what are the key components of a focused strategy of those that we're going to be working towards in this new season and the why behind it. And there's a communication strategy that's fueling who we are, where we're headed, and this is what we're going to start walking out. So often it's centered around your discipleship path, meaning we're going to really focus on getting our congregation really focused on these 3 areas or 4 areas of engagement. We're not going to try to do 27 different things, but we're really going to simplify and get them clear on these 3 or 4 areas of engagement. There is a plan and strategy for how are we going to be outsider focused as part of a relaunch. And that's a key strategy of how are we going to connect with those that either don't care or are spiritually curious, but they're not yet into the life of the church. And I think that's one of identifying that growth engine and having a plan for that